All right, so let's get right into this. One of the things you need to understand is that there was this rule that came out. It was EM 25046. It was an emergency message released specifically to tell people that they were going to remove pretty much all restrictions on accessing your bank account if you were an SSI, sorry, this chair is breaking on me a little bit, SSI retired individual, meaning you were basically over 65 on SSI benefits. Now, one of the things that worried a lot of people when it comes to this particular item, when it comes to emergency rule 25046, is that they stated in here, we expect to expand the scope of this new policy beyond SSI AI allowances, which serve as a starting point given the relatively low number of cases. And what they were basically saying there was, hey, we intend to go ahead and basically increase the amount of individuals that we have direct access to their bank account going forward. They likely meant with that they were going to search other categories of SSI people. So not just the over 65 SSI people, but also the SSI disabled people, the SSI entrance people, the SSI immigrant people, etc. That was the original theory behind it. Now, as you know, the federal government has been trying to get access legally to your bank accounts for quite some time. One of the biggest proponents for this are the Democrats when it comes to President Biden, pushing to know when $600 would leave your account or would enter your account. And then, of course, they put it back to $10,000 as the main cutoff for when the SSA or any other group really, inside the federal government needs to be notified about transactional differences. Now, with that said, that means if you're an SSI, pretty much in the not too distant future, they may have completely uninhibited access to your bank accounts. They already have access, but there are restrictions. And the point of emergency rule, EM 25046, was to kick the managers in the butt of these local field offices, of these regional field offices, etc., to make sure that they were applying the new rule. Because the big thing is they will have rules that change, and then they need to get the managers trained on how to do them so that they can train other people. Now, some of you may be saying, so what? They have access to my bank. Who cares? Well, let me give an example. Recently released from OIG, the Office of Inspector General, a Blairsville man pleads guilty to supplemental security income fraud and theft. Now, why is this specifically interesting? It's because very quickly they're able to use this information to go ahead and access your accounts and pull from it things that will get you essentially in major trouble. And I mean fraud trouble. That's usually what it comes down to, because you were claiming one thing, you had a little side income, and now, boop, they got you. All right, this was a Pittsburgh, PA, a resident of Blairsville, Pennsylvania. I know where that is. I'm actually in New Jersey right now. Pled guilty in federal court to charges of fraud and theft of government property, acting United States Attorney Troy Rivetti announced today. Terrence Benjamin Foster, 68, pled guilty before senior United States District Judge Joy Flowers Conti to one count of supplemental security income fraud and one count of theft of government property. So real quick, I know a lot of you guys are thinking they'll never care what kind of earnings I have from whatever, food delivery service or, pick up and drop people off service, whatever. I need you to understand that your life is going to be under a microscope going forward, because now they have more and more AI crawlers that are able to consistently and repetitively go through your bank accounts. Okay, here we go. In connection with the guilty plea, the court was advised that Foster applied for SSI benefits, a monthly needs-based payment benefit afforded to people with disabilities and the elderly who have little or no income through the Social Security Administration. Now, you notice how they always leave immigrants out of this? It's for three types of individuals: those over 65 that are impoverished, those who are disabled, and those who are immigrants. Okay, refugees, asylum seekers, and those who have been trafficked. Applicants are required to report their wages, assets, and living arrangements as factors for consideration in determining eligibility for SSI. So in other words, it's a poverty program. They want to make sure you are impoverished and that you continue to be impoverished throughout your receiving of these benefits. Okay, it makes sense, right? It's a poverty program. They want to know that you're poor in order to receive them. Okay, in 2025, SSA learned that wages were posted to Foster's record from 9 different employers, with employment records establishing that Foster worked for him from January 2020 through June of 2025. Had Foster informed the SSA of his income during this time, he would not have received any SSI benefits. In total, Foster obtained over $34,000 in SSI benefits for which he was not eligible. Judge Conti scheduled sentencing for January 21st, 2026. The law provides for a maximum total sentence of up to 10 years of imprisonment, a fine of up to $250,000, or both. Under the federal sentencing guidelines, the actual sentence imposed is based upon the seriousness of the offense and the prior criminal history, if any, of the defendant. Assistant United States Attorney Brendan J. McKenna is prosecuting this case on behalf of the government. The Social Security Administration Office of Inspector General conducted the investigation that led to the prosecution of Foster. Why do I read this case to you? Because what happened was they had basically search abilities into bank accounts of those receiving SSI benefits. And what they were able to discover was all of the different earnings and all the different money and all the different transactions that were occurring that maybe this person thought the SSA wasn't that interested in, but they are, and they have artificial intelligence now sweeping basically bank accounts. So what we're going to go through are the main things that the SSA will be using in the future to look for that you may or may not want them to know about. Now, this is not just a story about SSI. This is a story of caution for those on regular disability and retirement benefits, because as certain types of political figures get in, they want to have bigger government and they want to have more access to what you have in your bank accounts. And the reason for this is that ultimately, at the end of the day, the government can be more aggressive at knowing what types of funds you're receiving, what type of income you potentially have, and being able to tax you more aggressively. For example, if you earn over a certain amount, when it comes to, essentially, retirement benefits, in many instances, your retirement benefits will be reduced. If you earn over a certain amount for SSDI benefits, traditional disability, they will completely end your disability benefits because you will be over substantial gainful activity. Real quick, I want to do a shout out to Pale Rider 747, did a $2 donation, Space Constitution. Thank you. I really want to get more things going with Space Constitution. It's basically a nonprofit kind of idea where, and it's right now in LLC status, but I want to get it to the point where it's has a group of people working to create future constitutions for individuals that want to go ahead and go into space, so that we're not just relying on corporations to create the laws and regulations that would be dictated in these space colonies. All right, so let's rock and roll back to this list. These are some things that you need to keep in mind that the SSA will be looking for with their AI crawlers. Number one, the biggest one that always pops up is employer payroll related submissions or transactions. So in other words, if you're getting deposits and it's from some sort of work activity that's continuous and repetitive, a classic payroll company, maybe ADP, they're going to want to know about it. Now, as you know, the SSA already has access to the payroll companies exporting payroll data repetitively, and they just started doing that over the past 5 years. And the reason why is because now they know if people are earning too much and they have to cut off their benefits for that month. So now they've officially, by Congress, allowed them to have access to the payroll companies, so they know when and how much you're getting paid in case they want to cut off your benefits. Number two, the thing that they tend to find, the thing that causes some fraud investigations, are gig economy deposits. These are things like DoorDash, Amazon Flex, Upwork, Uber, Walmart delivery, whatever. These are kind of your gig economy deposits, where basically you have some app on your phone, you go do the thing, you collect the items, and then you drop them off, and it is what it is. That stuff, a lot of people used to believe, I'm not sure why it is, but a lot of people used to believe that when it came to this type of deposit, they believed it wasn't supposed to be income, and that basically the government was never going to see it. That is completely incorrect. They are all over gig economy deposits. They are all over knowing what type of transactions they are. Do not think that you can hide these from them. They will see them. Next, they tend to look very heavily for money transfers. Okay, so we're looking at like PayPal's, we're looking at Zelle's, Venmo's, Cash Apps, any of that types of stuff when it comes to cash transfers. And it's not just, your big deposits and things like that. It's also your repetitive, your continuous, your ongoing deposits. It's essentially those things where basically they're seeing somebody is basically helping you out, somebody is repetitively giving you a gift, so on and so forth. And remember, the first, when it comes to SSI people, in the point of counting, you get the 65-20 rule, right? So you get 85 bucks in there to go ahead and count against it. But they're looking for people that are helping you out. Why? Two reasons. A, they want to know if you're going over essentially SGA. They also want to know basically if you are, being assisted repetitively while on SSI benefits, because then they could potentially apply the 1/3 reduction rule. Another thing that's less common is when somebody helps you so much that you're likely to violate the $2,000 resource limit rule for SSI people, but that one's less common. Now, another thing that they are basically looking into are transactional legal changes. So let's say that you had an inheritance, or you want a big settlement, or you had a this or a that. Those types of transactions going into your account, they're going to be looking for, because those tend to be more of the larger lump sums. They also fall into categories of title transactions that they're looking for: car sales, home sales, land sales, collectible sales, crypto sales, etc. A lot of crypto people were able to fly under the radar for a while, made a ton of money, and now it's been clamped down. But the bottom line is this: when it comes to the sale of some sort of item, and collectibles are still somewhat protected from this, but when it comes to the sale of some item, whether it's a car, a home, some land that you own, whatever, at the end of the day, unfortunately, they're going to be heavily looking for those particular items, because they want to capitalize on taxing you to send the money to the government. Okay. And remember, at the end of the day, the Republicans are about getting a smaller government and then being able to pay for what it does. The Democrats are about having a larger government and taxing the people more. The only problem with that is the middle class can't afford to pay for everybody now. So it's just one of those gigs where there's not enough rich people to pay for everything, and there's not enough middle class people making enough money to pay for everything. So the welfare benefits are going to have to be dialed back. And as you know, 2033 is what they're projecting. The Social Security Retirement Trust Fund will, of course, unfortunately deplete, although it likely will happen before that, which means a 22-ish, percent reduction, somewhere around there in your monthly check. Okay, not good, not good. Now, lottery and gambling winnings. So one of the things I want to point out that a lot of you don't realize is that the SSA is going to be basically looking for not just, hey, you won $500 million, but they're looking for anything where you might have spent or bought, scratch off tickets, might have gotten some extra cash, or potentially you have online gaming on your cell phone, which allows you to go ahead and basically, roll the dice or spin the wheel or whatever on your phone. So they're also looking at kind of like state lottery, stuff like that. And they'll probably get more into raffles in the future too, although I haven't seen them be very active with that. Okay. Next one, when it comes to tax refunds and stimulus deposits, you have to watch out with SSI because of that $2,000 resource limit. Also, another thing too is that we're getting away from this era, but the era where people would pay you under the table in some fashion of a pension, we're just not in that era anymore. But they do keep an eye out for essentially pensions being repetitively paid, because they do like to know, basically what your stability is. Because remember, they build out a profile for every person that they have access to, that they build a profile for. And they want to know, what is the stability level of this person? Okay, so let's say that there was a war. What's their stability level? Can they afford things? Do they have, the ability to buy, extra resources, generators, food, etc.? All right. Next thing, rental income deposits. This is technically an investment type of payment: Airbnb, rent checks, electronic transfers, some sort of quick PayPal or Venmo or Zelle over to you. The whole point with this thing is that they're looking at essentially those types of payments that are made to you that are repetitive in function. And why do they look at this? Because most of these benefits, actually pretty much all of these benefits, get reduced in some fashion if you make over a certain amount. Of course, when you look at this, SSI benefits are the most reducing, or they would reduce the most. SSDI benefits are then up there. Then you get into your widows and your retirement and stuff like that. But the point that I'm getting at is all of these benefits that we get from the Social Security Administration over time evolved so that the government could take money from you if you started to earn more. And that's kind of the problem with Social Security as a social net. It was originally the idea of pay to play, and they wouldn't take more money from you if you kept earning because you had paid throughout your life. Now it's evolved in one of those things where even if you did pay to play, they're still going to take something from you if you earn too much. which, to be fair, doesn't make any sense. It is worse than a Ponzi scheme because you're forced to do it. But again, we all kind of voted for it and didn't realize how bad it was getting. I'm not going to blame boomers on this one because, as I've spoken with many boomers, I got to be honest with you, most of them have no clue what the hell's going on. They have no clue where things are going, where things were. It's just, it is what it is. And maybe that the real issue with the boomers was not that they voted in politicians knowing that they were going to do this. The real issue was that boomers just did not know what the hell was going on politically. They just toned out. They just, didn't know. So, and that's okay. You know what I mean? It's just not everybody wants to do politics. So of course you get screwed over every time you're not part of the chat, but it is what it is. All right, another thing that they're going to look at is basically business receipts. So let's say that basically you are somebody who's self-employed and you're making money, and they're going to look at essentially what you buy, or what you're receiving, or what you're selling, what's your return on investment, stuff like that. They definitely want to know, if you have a business, what it's doing, because they have all of these different profiles in existence with the IRS to figure out if what you are spending, if what you are making makes sense based off of the national average. Okay. Now let's talk about another thing. So something that's become of more interest of recent is what's happening with money and benefits that are being paid, and why does so much of it leave the country? So, for example, if some money is moving to Afghanistan or Pakistan or Israel, or let's say Uzbekistan or Poland or whatever, it doesn't matter, South America in general, the country is interested to know why the flow of money has consistently been going outside of this country. Now, America just got very expensive. So the reality is that things have gotten more pricey, right, to be able to go ahead and essentially afford anything, right? We had 4 years of a president who was not exactly the best economic chivalrous hero that we might hope for, but at the end of the day, right, they do look at essentially, why is money going to the Middle East? Why is money going to South America? Why is money going to China? Stuff like that. So you have to kind of keep that in mind. Some of it's going to Europe, some of it's going to Europe, but they do like to look at essentially foreign deposits as well. All right. Now, another thing, too, is that if there are so if you leave the country a lot and you're doing a lot of withdrawals, things like that, they basically look at that situation and say, okay, is this person living in the country? So if you have SSI benefits, your SSI benefits will get shut off because you're not supposed to be living outside of the country beyond a certain amount of time. And then, of course, if you're on SSDI benefits, or you're on retirement benefits, they're looking at, okay, well, does this person have a job overseas to be able to afford to live somewhere else and still have a house over here? So that they kind of look at this stuff, because this is all stuff that they have to investigate and understand. Okay. Now, another thing too is, all right, let's say that you have some sort of continuous repetitive deposit, right? Maybe it's not coming from a friend, maybe it's not coming from a family member, but there's some sort of continuous repetitive deposit. What they normally look for in that situation is where you sold somebody something. Could be a car, could be whatever, it doesn't matter, an RV, maybe a pull-along, whatever, fifth wheel, whatever, and that they are repetitively and continuously paying you off. And so that's one of those things where they look to see, okay, what assets did you have? What title changes occurred? Because remember, they can look up title changes. And then at that point, they know, okay, you got, let's say, 15 grand for that pull along trailer, and now yada, yada, yada. Okay. And keep in mind, too, one of the tough things that a lot of people have to learn is that with boats, RVs, all that stuff, the moment you drive that thing off the lot, the moment you drive that thing off the pier, the moment you drive that thing out of the Gulf, that thing massively declines in worth. So one of the things that they're looking at is, okay, how old is the object that you owned? What is the current market trend for it? And then basically, what are you receiving? How much have you received? And how many payments have already been made? And that kind of tells them what's going on. Okay. And even if you leave out some payments, like you leave out a month here, you leave out a month there, it's one of those situations where they're going to kind of fill in the gaps and figure it out. Okay. So other things that they tend to look for as well is where you're kind of covering things. Maybe you had lunch with a friend, you send them some money. Maybe you are covering utilities for somebody that lives in your house. You're going to cover that. They're looking for essentially household bill reimbursements as well, where you're spending some money here, spending some money there, etc. And this is because sometimes with welfare or SSI, they're looking at, okay, how is this person actually transacting their life expenses. Okay. I think one of the other thing that you have to kind of keep in mind too is that sometimes there's fraud involved with like tax fraud, and then all of a sudden somebody will say, okay, so let's say that somebody files an improper tax return and they get a tax return of money back from the IRS, and then the money gets spent this way or that way. If they notice that basically the chunk of sum is pulled out completely, right? That could be that you're paying off the person that helped you file the IRS taxes improperly. That could be a type of fraud where you intend to go and basically use the money for something else. If you have a history of drugs and alcohol and abusive related things and toxic substances, just kind of keep that in mind as well. Okay. Another one is where there's payee abuse. So you guys know what a payee is. A payee is a person who basically goes ahead and receives funds on behalf of a person who can't handle them on their own. So if they look at something and the payee basically comes through and says, hey, all right, instead of spending this money on the food of the disabled person, they're going to spend it on a trip to Europe, then they're going to be looking for that stuff as well. Because if the representative payee is now going on more trips overseas or more cruises into the water than they ever have before, that's going to be of interest to you. So the point of this video is to kind of explain that they are catching more and more people when it comes to fraud. And a lot of that is Doge, and people are like worried about it. But to be fair, a lot of you don't fall into the category. I'm not trying to scare you, but some of you do. And, I had two of those private sessions today where I went through individuals that were in a tricky spot. And I guess the big thing that I have to keep in mind with this, and as I explain this stuff to you, one thing you've got to be really strong on is the idea that the rules are changing very quickly, but more so than just the rule changes, it's the culture of the SSA is turning more into a privatized corporation, kind of like a private corporation you would normally work for as opposed to a general, usual government corporation. And the thing that you have to keep in mind with this is that, with the government corporations, they do as much work as they can to try and meet what, basically Congress requires of them. And that's it. There's no extra. There's no push beyond that. We're going to try to do the best we can. It is what it is at the end of the day. Okay, cool. Because they have a budget and that's the budget they're given, and it is what it is. There's no like, we're going to make money, we're going to profit off of this thing if we do a little bit more. But they're starting to act more like a profiting company that's private, because essentially the more people they catch and the more fraudsters they put behind bars, they just made money that they don't have to pay, which they're a big fan of. And remember, they're making a lot of money catching people because it's paying for the entire CDI unit program that they have to go ahead and follow these people around. So the point that I'm getting at with this is, it's turning into more of a traditional private, something that wants to make money corporation by essentially finding those who are committing fraud and then basically not having to pay those people forward. Because remember, a dollar saved is a dollar earned. And in this particular situation, they're going to be earning a lot of dollars from saving a lot of dollars from going and filing things against those who might have been committing something or doing something that was not kosher with the benefits that they were receiving. So in summary, to kind of, summarize this entire video, number one, there was a rule that came out that gave pretty much unfettered access to your bank account to the SSA called Emergency Message 25046. And then specifically, they intended to grow that rule into other people. We expect to expand the scope of this new policy beyond SSI AI allowances, which serve as a starting point given the relatively low number of cases. Then they came out with another person just recently who was on SSI benefits, who was working, didn't expect them to catch any of the income that was coming in. Blairsville man, Pennsylvania, now caught, prosecuted as a result of that, and as a result of all of this, now has fraud charges and will likely serve jail time. And because of that, we basically went through all the different types of things that AI, artificial intelligence crawlers will be using and looking for when they go into your bank account. And the whole idea of this is that you have to understand they don't have access to everybody's bank accounts yet. Yes, the SSI people, of course. but they've got a really good idea as to what's going on in your bank account based off of profiles. They also have access to your DMV information. They have access to your payroll information. They have access to general overview savings account information. So if they had to guess how much you've got in your bank, they'd be close, but they don't for everybody have the transaction by transaction yet. The SSI people, yeah, it's pretty much unfettered at this point. But the transaction by transaction, they don't have it for retired people yet. They don't have it for SSDI people, but they do have access to the payroll companies, which makes it so that they can see when you're getting paid and by who you're getting paid. So, they're getting closer and closer. I think within another 5 to 10 years, they'll have access to everybody's bank account. I think that'll be kind of like the future of things. That'll be, unfortunately, what's accepted, which is horrible. But again, I'm not a politician. I know politicians that are afraid of me joining into the potential competition for a seat, because obviously somebody who knows Social Security, unlike most politicians, is a huge threat to the usual politicians that are in there. But the bottom line is this, and I will tell you, and I think it's incredibly important. At the end of the day, you want to restrict the government from accessing your information because you want to create and retain control over the transactions of your life. That is incredibly important, okay? Anelad, wait, how do I pronounce your name? Anelad, well, the D is big at the end, so I'm not sure, but thank you for the $4 donation. I super appreciate it. That's absolutely awesome. Let me do a big heart there. Very, very cool. But let me know how to pronounce your name properly. That way I get it right. But so the point with this video is to explain that AI crawlers can search accounts. The SSA uses them. They're getting more access to bank accounts than they've ever had before. And going into the future, they'll probably get more access to other program benefits as well when it comes to your bank account. Please also remember, Trump has got another 3-ish years or whatever to go ahead and modify the SSA in the image that he sees fit. And what he's probably going to do to try and, fight fraud, but also find it and publish it. Because remember, a lot of this is finding and publishing the fraud that they find. Now, originally, Trump did not have a golden ticket. He looked really kind of shitty because he didn't have like these big examples of massive fraud that were occurring. So he didn't have it in retirement benefits. He didn't have it in disability benefits. I mean, there were isolated cases here and there for retirement, isolated cases here and there for disability. There's a little chunk of isolated cases for SSI, right? Okay, fine. There's definitely IRS fraud out there, but Medicare. Holy cannoli, over 15 billion in Medicare fraud. Absolutely massive amount of fraud in that particular arena. Now, I don't do Medicare stuff. I'm just giving you a heads up. I never got into it. It's not really my thing. But if you want to go ahead and call somebody, ask them questions, call these guys. They basically work with us so that essentially you go and call them. It's a free call. And then at the end of the day, they'll go ahead and see if there's a really good program out for you and give you a tune-up on your Medicare. Remember, the whole idea of this is to make sure that you have the insurance that's going to work for your current and future, upcoming surgeries, upcoming medication, upcoming doctor's visits, upcoming whatever. You want some new medical drug coming out of a pharmaceutical company, call them. They're probably tracking it, and let them figure out whether or not they can get you on a program or plan that would be more willing to pay for it. Okay. So again, just give them a call, 339-226-6287. That's because I don't do Medicare stuff. I partner with them to handle that. All right. With that said, I want to do a super thank you to Robert Platinum. Big heart there. He said, Walt, you should go into politics, put that high IQ to work. The thing is, I've been pushed a lot. I had a conversation with a politician the other day. I have to, of course, sell the law firm, which, by the way, if you don't know me and this is the first video you're ever seeing of me, I'm Attorney Walter Hnot, the most viewed, subscribed to, and clicked on disability attorney in America. So if you want a disability attorney, give us a call, 407-279-1754, but it's in the bio. And it's not hard to look up the firm. It's just Disability Resolution Law Firm. But the bottom line is, yes, I'm getting pushed for that. The major problem that I have is that, unfortunately, as I've studied and talked with a lot of these different political figures, I've realized that while they talk a big game about Social Security fixes, they A, don't have an education on it, B, don't have a stomach for spending money, and C, don't really know enough to invent enough or feel comfortable with new bills that would invent a way to get us to the end point of a successful Social Security system. If I ever did politics, it would not be for a long term. It would be to fix essentially the trust funds. I have many ideas. I don't share them all because, frankly, at the end of the day, I don't think people would understand them all, but I should do more with that because there is a fix. We can make other countries pay for it, and we can go ahead and reduce the retirement age by doing I'm not going to do it right now, but there's like 5 things that basically we can do to go ahead and make it so that people will live longer and have retirement benefits at a younger age that will act more like a pension for you paying into the company of America. There's ways to do it. There's a lot of ways to do it. I got to run the law firm. I'm doing the YouTube channel, and I'm trying to get finished with this rental home, which, by the way, if you ever buy a destroyed house, it's not as easy as it wouldn't seem easy to do it, to fix it up. Like a tree was growing through the roof and everything, like one of those houses. I didn't realize. I didn't know. I didn't know. So it's just, that thing beats the hell out of me. But because everything is a repair. Everything's a repair on the damn thing. So every bathroom, every single appliance, every toilet, the roof, every wall in every room, every floor, the concrete driveway, massive patch job, painting, pool leak issue. We had to pull a tree out of the pool. The whole schmutz. I didn't realize. So what can you do? Well, now I know how to rebuild a house. So that sucks. But anyways, I will catch you all a little bit later. You have a wonderful day. Please remember to like and subscribe. Head over to Google, type in Disability Resolution Florida. That's the law firm. I love seeing those reviews up there. So if you get a chance to throw some stars up there, a little star here and there, throw it up there. Also, very important, please remember to like and subscribe. So many of you don't hit the like button because you just don't want to use the clicker. Please use your clicker. Please give the like button a chance to shine. Also, if you have a difficult situation, not just like, hey, can you represent me for disability benefits, but like a thing where you're already receiving benefits, or you're worried about, an OIG investigation, or you're already going through one, or you're about to retire and want to know how to go on to disability benefits and then retirement or whatever, I do private sessions. It's pay to play, 30 minutes or an hour. Mini contract is below. And then finally, on Mondays, which is today, I normally go live and answer questions for free. Now, I'm going to be driving directly after this. So if you call the law firm after this and you get me, I'll be in a car driving to Maine. It's my official vacation. I'm going to be driving to Maine. So tonight I may go live and answer questions for free, but I am going to be doing another debate night where you guys get to ask me and debate with me whatever you want, in honor of basically a YouTuber that has fallen. You know who he is. And, so that you understand some of the things, I get, unfortunately, those threats all the time. He got a heck of a lot more than I ever did. But you understand that basically one of our community was taken, and it was a horrible thing. And we need to, as a result, we need to do more debating. So if you want to talk about Social Security debating, you want to talk about retirement, you want to talk about whatever, I'm down. I will catch you all tonight or tomorrow. Have a wonderful, wonderful day. And please remember to be kind to each other. Be nice, because we are all part of the same Social Security community. Thank you so much. And I'll catch you later. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.